to, hey, Dana Brooks, Facing Brooks, you are back with another episode of the EmPower Hour brought to you by the EmPower Plant. And I am welcomed again by my great panel. We've got Kia Thomas, our PR director. Hey, Kia.
Hey.
I got Kimmy Hogan back. She's off the road, off the Zoom. She's got some time for us today. Thank you, Kimmy.
Yes, of course.
And we have got the elusive Rose Caswick. We've got the woman who's in charge of the most important aspect of this, and that is getting our drink right. And I have to tell this story. I told it to Kia and some other people yesterday on the road. I said, you know, Rose couldn't be here for the drink of the week. And I thought, well, we've got a very eclectic bar cart that has formulated itself in our kitchen. It has a whole residency. It's got multi-layers, levels or whatever. And there's some very exotic things in there. There's absinthe. You know what I mean? And so I thought to myself, well, surely when she passes the baton to me and I have to do the drink of the week, I can conjure something. And then I realized I've got a lot of resources. I've got millennials in here. I've got some Gen Zs. And so I said, hey, you know, y'all drink anything anybody puts in front of you, make something that will taste good. We go in there, nothing worked. I mean, there was just like a million ingredients of exotic things, but nothing presented itself as a drink. So that's why we have again taken back that responsibility from me and given it to the maestro, the master. Rose, what are we drinking today and why are we drinking it?
This is a fall cider sangria. It's not made with wine, it's made with hard cider. So it's apples and oranges and apple juice and bourbon. And then at the end you pour in the hard cider because it's fizzy. And it is, I just want it to be fall. So we're pretending like it's fall.
It's autumnal.
Yeah. And so I realized the fatal flaw in being the one to make the drinks is that it's made me too popular. People think they can talk to me now and whatever. So
try to go to Publix now, sister.
Right. Further notice, all the drinks are me themed since I've suffered for this art. So it's because I wanted it. That's why.
No, this is everything. It's got a piece of apple, which is my favorite fruit. Love it.
Wow.
I'm getting your salad too, your fruit salad.
Plus, it's a salad. I'm crossing a lot of things off the list just with this drink.
I'm here for your health.
Mm-hmm. Here for it. No, we've got a great guest, y'all. We've got Lisa Finn. And I talked to her a minute ago and I said, I want to go deep in this because I can relate to a lot of it. Lisa Finn is I don't want to overstate it or misstate it because I know you're an endovascular expert, but no one knows what the hell that is.
Sure.
You are in the medical field as a woman, so already, rare. Number two, you are in sales, which if you're a woman in sales, we'll talk about that later, that carries with it a lot of baggage that you have to disabuse people of, these notions and assumptions. You're also younger, you know? So you've got a lot of things that you have experienced, come up against, and you have blown up. You're excelling in your career. You've written a book, which I have not read, but I've read about it, and I can't wait to get behind it, the code and cracking the code, that sort of thing. Just first of all, welcome, Empower Women to the EmPower Hour. We're glad to have you here. We're so glad you made time for us. But tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you're passionate about, what made you want to write this book.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. I'm Annalise Finn. For those that know me well, I go by Lisa. Annalisa is my given name, but it's a lot easier to say Lisa for a lot of people. So I go by Lisa Finn in most of my professional life. So I've been in medical device sales now for over 20 years. I started it, I was 21, 22, going in very green, very naive. My father's an orthopedic surgeon, so I was around the medical field since I was a tiny child. About 3 or 4, I'd start going on the rounds with him into the hospital, seeing the little old ladies that he'd take care of, and fell in love with medicine. Decided not to get into medicine myself, but loved the sales aspect of it. So early on after graduating college, I realized that I just really wanted to hop into it. hopping into it isn't exactly what I did. I worked to try and get into the medical field for about 2.5, 3 years before I finally landed the job that got me into devices. I went straight into devices, and from there I've moved through a couple of different companies, big names, Medtronic, Guidant, which is now Boston Scientific, Johnson & Johnson. And now currently I've been doing what I've been doing for the past 10 years with Terumo Aortic, which is endovascular sales, which for the layperson is aortic stent grafts. So we are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We come in for aneurysms, ruptures, and dissections on patients of all ages. And I cover a very broad territory. I travel all the way to Birmingham, Alabama, and I go all the way down to Gainesville. My home away from home is pretty much Shands. I'm there a lot, probably once or twice a week, as well as UAB in Birmingham, where I just came from earlier today. So that's a little bit of background on me.
Okay,
I love
ask,
my job.
I'm glad to hear that. I want to ask you just a very basic thing. What is it that you do?
Sure.
Like, do you teach and sell?
Sure. Yes.
I mean, what is it that what's your day in, day out job?
Sure. So most medical devices, we carry the products, or the company ships the products in. Some of the hospitals keep them on their shelves. Mm-hmm. My specific job is I get a call from a surgeon. He says, hey, I've got this patient. I need you to size.
Why'd you say he?
He or she calls me up. You're right.
No, your instinct, I'm sure, is to say he, because I'm telling you right now, I know of one female orthopedic surgeon. I was a medical malpractice, just parenthetical. I was a medical malpractice attorney and paralegal for over 20 years. And I'm honestly right now thinking of one female ortho.
Yeah. We've seen a lot more female surgeons, thank goodness, into the medical field, I would say in the past 5 or 10 years, but vascular surgery and cardiothoracic surgery, which are the two main areas that I work in and call points that I call on, is predominantly male. We've only really seen the surgeons of women in the past 5 years or so. And it's interesting because, and I have a really good female surgeon who lives in Tallahassee, and you probably know her very well. She's a vascular surgeon. And what's interesting is they face the same issues that we face as women in the medical devices. It's the same exact thought process. So male or female, when they call me, he or she, I've sized up the patient's CTA, which means they get a CAT scan. I have this CAT scan sent to me. I look at the patient, I look at all the details of the patient, then I read the CAT scan, I size it, and I tell the physicians what devices I recommend we put in the patient. Now, the physicians can always say, you know, I don't agree with you, or I want to do this or that. But either way, I bring in the grafts to the surgery. I walk them through how to deploy the stent graft, and I'm there from the beginning of surgery to the end.
I have 3 questions that are throbbing through my brain right now. And my law partner's ears also went up. So I'm like, okay, first of all, if it goes south, who do I sue? What's your responsibility for that call?
Yeah.
Okay, Rose and Kimmy. The other thing is, what are those things that you and she also face in both of your industries? You know, that's a question. And then there's one in the middle that I'm sure will resurface, but that's 2 to give you.
Sure. As far as medical malpractice, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know.
Oh, that was my question, was how do those fellas receive you telling them what size stents, what to use, how to use, whatever? How do they receive that helpful information you want to impart?
Sure. So in my book,
sarcastic face said in sarcastic voice.
Absolutely. In my book, I talk about presentation, and that is everything, especially with a female. Men take for granted that they can just walk into a room, scrub cap on, they're good to go, you know, mask on, they're fine. Women have to have their hair back, little to no makeup on, don't look
no nails, no heels.
You know,
paralyzing.
You have to be assertive, not aggressive. Right. There are many different things that we face. And if you're not assertive enough, they don't have confidence in you. And if you're too assertive, then you're looked at like you are, not a very good person.
It's like walking a minefield just to get a paycheck, man. I'm as educated as you are. We went to the same schools. We had the same tests, the same admission criteria, the same licensure. Why am I having to just become a character every day just to survive? Rose Caswick, are you listening?
I am listening.
Are you having feelings?
I am having feelings.
Do you have questions or comments for our guest?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the way you present yourself is such a big part. Being a lawyer, like you want to be taken seriously, blah blah. And for the longest time, it's been, skirt suits and conservative dress and whatever. And I think fortunately, we don't subscribe to that too much unless we're trying to have a real power suit moment. And I think Zoom has kind of loosened people up on that as well. But yeah, I guess, how do you get people to take you seriously, and how much of like paying your dues type of thing is there in your industry?
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of answering all those questions that
I mean, it's from beginning to end. It's the tone of your voice, the way you look, the way you speak, how clinically savvy you are, what have you studied, who do you know? And just your tenure. It's a lot, right? Whereas a male, he's already given the green light. He's already given the chance to just walk in there. Now, if he screws up, he'll probably get another chance.
Yep.
If I screw up, I may not. So,
That girl didn't know what she was doing. I knew it from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it. Kia, what are your thoughts right now as you're listening to our guest? She is in one male-dominated profession, and she's not like we get a lot of that as lawyers. But if you don't have that credential, you're not a lawyer also, you can feel diminished and not heard. And I can't even imagine this woman going up and talking to some medical and osteopathic doctors, surgeons no less, and telling them, no, do this, not that, and this is how you do it, and that's not correct, and this is. I can't even imagine, even in 2021, after the EmPower Hour has been on the air almost a year.
I was just thinking on the level of, they always use, and I think we've already said it, that we're too assertive. And to me, that was one of the things I was going to touch on, but, they already indicated it. Have you ever gotten that you were being too assertive? If you
Absolutely.
did, how did you handle that?
You know who I got it from?
Who?
The females.
Good Lord. You know why? Because you're upsetting their apple cart. They found a way to navigate this terrain, and you're messing it up. I get that a lot. Say more about it.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, you have to almost come in a little more as apologetic to the women and assertive to the men. It's a very funny dynamic in the way that it plays out. At the end of the day, what I tell all my ladies and men actually that are behind the table with the surgeon is, look, I'm here to do one job and one job only. That's to get your patient on and off the table as safely as possible without upsetting your physician and hurting the patient. That's 100%. My job. At the end of the day, that's all I'm here to do. I'm not here to take your place. I don't want that. I know that you have that relationship with your surgeon, and I'm not going to take that away from you. There's a lot of dynamics where they feel threatened when you come in, especially as a female. And it's not like I can just kid around and, pinch their arm or do something like that, like some of my male cohorts can do, and get away with it. I can't do that, nor would I do that.
Well, listen, the more you do that, though, the more you play into that, the more you accommodate that, the more of it you're going to get. So you're just screwing yourself whenever you take on a responsibility you never asked for, which is maintaining a fragile male ego. Or a fragile male ecosystem, not ecosystem, ecosystem. I made that up. If that ever becomes popularized, remember you heard it here first. Ecosystem.
Give her credit.
Okay. Because I'm telling you right now, I've already been robbed of some original funny stuff. But anyway, Kimmy, what are you thinking as you hear from our guests? Because you also, I mean, Rose and I do medical malpractice, but also personal injury law. Basically, doctors are as important in our practice as anything else, as lawyers, as judges, as clients, as witnesses. They're very essential. So you've had to deal with them as a woman lawyer. Do you ever get brushed off? Do you ever think that maybe our male lawyer partners probably don't get dismissed or treated the way you do? What's your experience?
I've actually had a great experience with male lawyers in town when I've come in as an attorney.
Male doctors?
I'm sorry?
Male doctors?
Male doctors,
yeah.
So when I go in to talk to a doctor, I always hit them with the highlights. So I keep our time together very short, like 5 minutes or less. this is who I represent. This is what I'm here to do. What's your opinion? Here
Brilliant.
you go. You know, there's no fluff. There's no, hey, how are you? It's very clinical. I'm in and I'm out, and I've had great success with that. But I don't try to be buddy. I'm not trying to make friends. I don't know if that's a different thing where maybe male.
Would you be different if you were going to a woman doctor?
You know, what's funny is that I actually, I don't know that I've had a female doctor other than mental health counselors that have been for my clients, which is a different dynamic. That is a friendlier dynamic. But all the other doctors actually have been male now that I think about it.
Well, I mean, honestly, this is borne out. This is not Dana's opinion, but the softer the profession is, the more woman dominated it is. And the more a woman dominates a profession, the lower the wages are.
Yep.
That's always true.
Yeah, I mean, Kimmy's right. All the neurologists, neurosurgeons, orthopedics, the type of people that we deal with in our personal injury practice, at least locally, they're all dudes.
They're all dudes. But if you look at medicine, pediatrics, lower paid, dealing with children. Look at the people we pay the lowest outside of medicine, people who take care of our children, healthcare providers and teachers. You know what I mean? They always say you can tell the value of a society by where they put their money and what they value. And so anybody who takes care of women and children is undervalued in America. And so whenever you go into their world, their arena, and you're not as credentialed as they are in their view, I can imagine you probably thought many times, fuck this. This is not worth it. Did you ever think there's probably an easier way to make money?
Yes. But it's not so, I think for me, my job is very demanding. I drive a lot. I literally just drove 14 hours within the past day. I drove from Gainesville, then all the way to Birmingham, then all the way back to the house. And that was just to cover cases. So that takes me away from my family. And that's when I'm like, man, this is rough. But, I love what I do, and I love who I work with, and I love my job. So I can't just walk away from it. But there are times when I get very frustrated at situations or the way that something is handled. And I'm like, this should have been done differently, but because I am who I am, it's going to be handled this way instead. And I tend to lose my cool with my manager sometimes, and some others that I probably shouldn't, but I get very frustrated when situations that should be handled very easily kind of get turned a little bit. I think just because I'm a female and I emotionally react to something when maybe I need to learn how to check my emotions a little bit better at the door.
Why? To make somebody else comfortable? To conform to a dominant culture? Maybe change the dominant culture.
I do think that men hear us more when we are more solid in our answers versus high and low pitched. And I've noticed that a lot. In surgery, it's very clinical. It's, you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And this is what's going to get us out of trouble. Whereas when you feel like you're put on the spot and you're questioned about something, whether it's sales or performance, and it's reflection on you, I feel like, at least for me, I tend to get emotionally charged with it. And then immediately I think I lose the attention that I should be getting.
Okay, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to deep breathe for a minute. And I'm going to ask you to consider not accommodating that. And I want you to consider a world where you don't have to, you're not expected to, and you don't have to do it to be successful. A world in which you have a lot of other women like me going, I'm not fucking doing that. Okay? You need to grow up. Realize you're not the only person in this world, and that you have to work with other people to be successful.
Absolutely.
And so I am not going to tone myself down. I'm not going to react in a way that makes you comfortable because you have more power than me. What I'm going to do is talk to my sisters and enlighten men. I'm going to take your power from you. Would you consider that? I want you to consider that.
Yeah.
Before my head explodes. Let's somebody come in and save me.
Hey, I've got some
No,
questions.
to me, I mean, honest,
Yeah.
honest to God, I mean it so much, because what we're doing is perpetuating a problem we don't deserve to have. And that is the support and the perpetuation of this fragile male ego. I've got to come at you in a way you will receive me. Okay, yeah, that's true whenever you are up against insurmountable odds. But it's different now. There's a lot of empowered women. There's a lot of people who come behind you, and there's safety in numbers. There's power in numbers. So
Yeah.
we don't have to adopt a persona that is agreeable to these people who are clenching to power by their fingernails. I promise you, it is not guaranteed. Don't just assume these people who have power now are going to maintain it. Do not. Come at them. Come for them.
Good
Get your
point.
girlfriends. Get your enlightened men.
Can I
behind
call you
Come
every
for
day?
them.
Can I call you Dana every day?
Dana
Every
Puppy.
day.
Every day.
Every day. Every day.
We'll show up.
Okay, who wants to take this baton?
I do.
Yeah.
Do it,
I wanna-
Kimmy.
Well, I want to know about the book. So you're cracking the code.
Excellent.
What's the code?
Excellent. Yeah, I want to ask you that. Tell us about the book.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, you know, the first couple of chapters are more on presentation, the way that you need to dress. I mean, and the reason where I'm
That
coming from
matters.
that, where I
That
came
matters.
from that is,
Please don't, just before you go any further, don't misunderstand me. I know you got to work with what the world is now. I wrote a book on it too. Use what you got, but just consider not maintaining it. But go ahead. How you dress, how you present yourself.
right. And more of that, it's more just a clinical setting. You know, I've seen a lot of girls come in, usually it's with the younger girls that don't quite know yet. They'll be wearing the perfume and the makeup and jewelry and all the things that really in the clinical setting, they have no place. There is no reason to have all that in a clinical setting. And the other reasoning is because you want to be taken seriously. You're there to do a job. So I talk about that. I talk about just constantly learning. I mean, medicine is huge. It's a huge industry. And though our surgeons that we call on may have a specialty in vascular and they may have a specialty in my specific procedure, there are other procedures that they do that also make them money. So in a lot of and one of the chapters, I talk about how you need to educate yourself more and you need to make sure that you're on top of things so that you have something to talk about with your surgeons other than just sell your product. I talk about the dinners. I talk about customer dinners and company dinners, how important these things are. How are you supposed to set the dinner up? What should be the dinner talk, the flow, where to go? You know,
people think you just show up and just be charming. No, that's your job. That's a job.
It is your job. It is. But if you're putting it together, you need to be mindful of, you know, who likes what and how you're doing it. So you're kind of your own little coordinator, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that you do in the medical arena is a reflection of you. I mean, you are just like what you guys do. You're constantly in a spotlight. So when you make a mistake, whether it's at a dinner or it's in the OR, you're going to be held to that standard and be thought of that for a very long time. You will not be easily forgiven over it. So it's very important that you're consciously aware of it all the time. I talk about alcohol a lot. I learned a very hard lesson. I had many times when I went out and drank way too much, pissed off physicians, pissed off their wives.
I didn't do that. I was too much fun. I was the opposite.
But you lose business over that. And that's not my goal. My goal is to gain the business, not lose it. So I talk about how you need to manage that. And then of course, you know, Dana, you alluded to it earlier prior to our conversation going live is what do you do when you have, you know, the other side coming in and showing interest? You're working late hours. I mean, we work until 2 or 3.
You're traveling, you're out of town, you're going
out
to
of town, you're at a hotel
receptions.
Yep, you're at a hotel for meetings with your companies and other companies. You're in the OR late at night.
Yep.
It's you can absolutely be put in positions where you don't feel comfortable. It's happened to me way too many times.
Right.
Early on, I would just kind of freak out and run the other way. And then I learned how to talk through it. At the end of the day, if you don't have a good head on your shoulders and you are going to be easily wavering, it's probably not a good place for you to be.
Yeah, but you know what? Again, I want women to not think about things like that and get scared, because the more women do what you said, because I've been in that situation now, and you just freeze.
Yeah.
You're just going, every thought in the world is going through your head. And the goal, the objective is to get on the other side of this, put this in my past. And so you're just trying to get through it. and you think to yourself, I would never want to encourage another woman to come up through this. But if you do some things, like you said, you just talk through it. Sometimes you just go, listen, maybe we're misreading each other. I've enjoyed your company, but I'm not interested in you like that. Let's keep it, here. But most people don't do that. They're just so freaked out,
Yeah.
Kia, you've been in marketing. Marketing is a lot like sales, which is a lot like lobbying. We talked about before the program, if you're a woman lobbyist, you're considered to be selling other than your client's best interests. What have you had an experience like that?
Actually, I have. Although I'm just
that you're willing to share, obviously. I mean, just generically, you or people you know in the world. I don't want to be anybody's business.
Right. Exactly. When you're just going to even just help someone, as far as with their sponsorship or trying to figure out what they need or what they want, they do still want something in return. I was actually told, I didn't think I was exotic. I'm just a Black girl. So there's nothing else mixed
compared to me. You're awfully damn exotic.
Clearly. So it was like, you're so exotic. And I was like, look here, sir, I'm here to get this done. And just like what Kimmy was saying, it's kind of like you're giving them those high levels. And the fact I did actually get dubbed as being very assertive, but of course they added extra. It was like, she's that assertive Black girl.
Assertive Black girl.
So it is hard because all you're trying to do is come and do a job. I want to make sure that, your reputation is always intact. All of our things that we do together is amicable. We're building this relationship together, and they're always thinking about taking it to the next step. And when you were saying, Kimmy, just keeping everything very high level, it was still looked at as being assertive. Like, she could have talked to me a little longer, or even though it was an hour's worth of their time. And I'm sitting here like, I didn't want to take up too much of your time because we have things to do. You have things to get back to. So I totally agree that being in any industry right now is definitely hard. And I always go back to equity. Forget about equality. All we want is equity, period.
Yeah. Equity is fairness. Equity is fairness. It doesn't mean 50-50. It means what's fair.
Correct.
And sometimes somebody gets more than 50 because that's what's fair.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Sometimes people gets less because that's what's fair. Kimmy, anything else that you're thinking about that you want to talk to our guests about?
Yeah, so I wanted to get a little deeper. I love, Dana, your example of if someone's coming on to you, you're not interested. I love maybe we're misreading each other, but that's not what's coming from me.
Right.
Lisa, for you, what'd you put in your book? What's the advice that you give to folks in your industry?
The first thing is you need to already have an excuse in your head. You should already kind of know, just from interacting with this surgeon or surgeons or whoever it is, that there's probably something happening. And so if you're going to have this dinner meeting or you're going to have whatever's going on, your story already needs to be in your head. So it doesn't look like you're like fumbling around and making things up. In the book, I talk about excusing yourself from the table to make a phone call. You need to talk to your husband or kids or whatever it is. Having that conversation, like Dana mentioned, maybe I'm just misreading this a little bit, but you do have to be careful, because what you don't want to do is hurt the ego. One of the worst things somebody can receive is rejection. So you don't want to make them feel like they're rejected, but instead, play it off. Listen, I got to go I need to use the restroom. I think it's getting late. It's probably time to go home. The things that you can kind of just do versus just openly say, this is not going to happen, because again, that rejection can really hurt a relationship. Sometimes though, if it gets to a point where they're not going to get it, they just don't get the word, they don't get the notice, you end up having to cut off that relationship completely. And that can hurt business, obviously. But what can hurt business even worse is being put in that position and then word getting out, and it's just really bad. So, it hasn't happened a lot to me, but it has happened. I would say it probably happened more in the past than it's happened now. I'm older now, I'm wiser now, I've learned. When I was young, I saw all sorts of things. But I think now that I'm a little older, people just they don't push their limits with me anymore. But for the younger crowd, and even for us now, it'll happen occasionally. You just have to be smart about it.
I hear you. I hear you. And you know, obviously, what my orientation and my feelings about this are. And I feel like there's two trains of thought here. One is, this is the actual world, and this is how to be successful in it. And I feel like that's your orientation.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one, which is, that's not okay. No one else has to do that sort of mental, emotional, psychological gymnastics just to make a fucking sale.
Mm-hmm.
No one else has to do that to women when they're selling to women. No one has to do that. No one ever goes, man, I got to maintain this woman's fragile ego, or my whole life will fall down because she has all the power and her friends do too. And all the people she went to college do too. And it's just a whole world I will never be able to break through if I make this bitch unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen. And so I reject trying to do things that perpetuate and sustain that, yet I am a realist, and I am a mother, and I know you do what you have to do in this world to take care of your obligations. So I'm conflicted, as most women are, but I do want to recognize the privilege a man enjoys and not having this conflict that they're having to work out with their friends that they want to very much support, who think you're continuing this, fight it with me, but they're like, well, who's going to pay my bills while I'm fighting this fight?
Yeah.
You know, that could be women, that could be people of color, that could be LGBTQ people. But I do believe if we band together, we have such combined interests, and we lose when people dissect us.
Yeah.
I think we should focus on what we have in common and fighting this thing, which is a white male dominant ego that's keeping everybody down. I love men. I don't have any problem being white, obviously. But we're not superior. We shouldn't rule the world. There should be a place for everybody in it. And I'm willing to yield some of the privileges I enjoy for a better society, for my daughter and her children and the people who come after me. So I don't know. Who wants to speak up next?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously have never been accused of being too friendly. I'm the burn it to the ground type of person. So
Rose is also my ride or die. Nobody knows this, but honestly, I would have her be the executor of anything that ever mattered in my life.
I will absolutely cut off my nose to spite my face if the circumstances are warranted, you know. I just can't abide it, you know. I would have a hard time acting conciliatory and like, oh, maybe I'm the one who did something wrong, you know, in that situation. I would rather shame you into being better in the future. Like, look, maybe I'm not going to sell to you today, but maybe you'll feel fucking bad about yourself.
Go fuck yourself. I can tell you, I mean, honestly, obviously this is our podcast. I can say whatever I want to say.
Right.
I think I've dropped about 4 or 5 F-bombs today.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good though. It's all good. Now, I want to ask you this, Lisa. How do you keep going? Do you see a bright light? Or do you see this drudgery being all these egos you got to maintain to make your money in the field you've chosen?
Yeah. No, I mean, 20 years ago to today, some things have not changed at all. And some things have changed quite a bit. I think future is amazing. I think, you know, like I mentioned, I've seen more and more women coming into the medical field, not necessarily the device industry and staying, but the medical field as my surgeons. And I love that. I see much more of a balance, but I also see men accepting that to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And I do asterisk that to a certain degree, because there's still that expectation of all women in the medical field that if you're going to do this job, you are going to have to give up your time. So, you know, that is something that I think is.
And when you give up your time, you give up your power. Whenever you give up your time in the professional arena, your voice is diminished, your power is diminished, your ability to determine your future and that of other people who have similar interests with you is also diminished. I get that, but I will tell you this. I have seen a sea change in the legal industry. Because in law firms, it used to be just almost like that. We don't have residencies and stuff like that. But when you were in law school and you were right out of law school, you were expected to be there 80 hours a week. Never was a partner or a lawyer expected to be in the firm after hours or on weekends before or after you. That was shame.
Yeah.
And so women are like, how the hell am I supposed to, have a family? Because women still traditionally have to do all this family shit. And they're like, how am I supposed to do this? Well, guess what happened? More women graduate law school, way fewer women stay in the legal field. So they pay all that money for that fantastic education, don't use it, because the overwhelming burden comes from society's expectations and the burdens that you take on that tell you that your time is more valuable spent here than in your career. So I get what you're saying, but what we saw in the legal field is people in Rose's generation and Kimmy's generation, they just said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. And when I couldn't hire anybody as good as them for as much or cheaper, it changed my behavior as an employer.
Yeah.
So they banded together, that generation, and now it's even more. I mean, now, please, they want, corner offices and 3 days off a week and whatever. And they get it if they perform, because I don't give a shit about how many hours you work. I care about your outcome.
Performance, of course.
And how the clients like you and if you do it ethically and honestly, that sort of thing. I don't care how many, I'm not looking for punishment.
Yeah, I think and I agree with you, and I would love to see that in the medical field as well. But I do know that, there are certain aspects that you have to be on call. When you're on call, you're on call. You're going to call at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 5 a.m. You're going to work a 12-hour OR case and stand on your feet all day. You can't pee, you can't pump, you can't eat. So there are certain things, unfortunately, that us as women, we have to bear those. But I will say I'm encouraged because I've seen more women do it and do it happily and still have a family. And in time, just like I'm sure at your firm, you earn that, right? So over time, you get to earn, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I'm going to go on my partner, I'm going to go on a trip. We're going to take 2 weeks off, and you've got that 2 weeks. So I do see that more. I still see some of them that decide they just want to go part-time, and you're right. Your time is your power. When you lose that time, you do lose that power.
But you're working in an entirely different world than we are.
Absolutely.
We can show up from anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. We could be on the North Pole and show up. But so many people in the medical arena, they have to be there. And this is the other thing with orthopedic surgeons. Like the one I told you I only knew of one woman. Yeah. That's a physical job. Have you ever seen anybody rack a spine?
Oh yeah, my dad's an orthopedic surgeon. It's like a hammer, and they're hammering away.
Oh, I'm telling you right now, I work out.
Yeah. No, it's physically exhausting.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Right.
There's certain things that men physically are superior in their ability to. So you know what I'm saying? That kind of thing, maybe. Yeah. But there's a lot of it that's just women just never went into that arena. They never went into because of the demands and but again, I could get on a soapbox for a million years. I'm sure you can too. If we paid the provision of medical services differently, it could change the entire expectation of how much you needed to work. Right. If we weren't paying people by their labor, but by their value, we could change a lot of things in this world. Kia, what are you thinking today as we've got a little bit of time? You have any particular questions? She's got a book about this culture. I wonder this, maybe you do too. When you write a book about the world you're in, are you getting any pushback with that? I don't know. Kia, what are you thinking?
I was thinking, considering, and it's almost on the same lines of what you were talking about, considering where you are now, what would you say to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self not to take everything so personally.
Yeah.
Try not to take everything that physicians do and say to you personally, male and female, nurses as well, techs as well. And I would tell myself to slow down a little bit, calm down, and think through some things. Don't get so wrapped around the axle with everything to where your brain becomes cloudy and you're not thinking like you should.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two main things that I would tell myself. There's a lot of things, but those are probably the two main things.
And those are good things for
Mhm.
pretty much any aspect of your life.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely.
Kimmy.
I'm curious about the chapter on dinner talk, like, because sometimes we get taken out by people trying to sell us stuff, and I didn't know there's like a formula to
I bet there is.
how you're pitching at. So I'd like to hear your insight on that.
Yeah. So, you know, like I mentioned a little bit before, every physician that we call on has multiple things that they're interested in, right? And some of it's medicine, some of it could be their kids, their, you know, their sports, their hobbies, all of that kind of stuff. So depending on what who your physician is and how he or she likes to, you should know who they are, you know, in terms of personality. Do they want to talk more about medical stuff? So if you know that they do, you do your research, you learn on any papers that they've written recently. What do the papers say? What do the data say? You know, what are the comments saying? What about a new procedure that's coming out? What do they think about this new procedure or new product? And have some personal backup. Either you've called another rep that they use that product or new procedure so that you're not just walking into it cold. My main reason for that is, or you can talk about personal things too, you know, wine and food and all that kind of thing. But my main reason is I made the mistake of just driving the sale. My main goal is to have this dinner to drive the sale. And all that does is it pushes people away in general, I think, to say, hey, I'm out here to have a good time. I want to get to know you a little bit. You know, what are your kids' names? What are your dogs' names? What's your wife or husband's name? What do they like? Where do you guys travel? You know, that kind of thing. So it sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised at what you see at dinners. And you're like, oh my gosh, this guy just wants to chill. She just wants to talk about, you know, the last trip she went on. I mean, so that's the kind of thing that I put in there. It's the book itself is more of a guide than it is. I mean, I have some stories in there, but it's more of a guide of, hey, you should probably try and do this and not that. Let's check this box. Let's check this box. So, you know, that was kind of the way that I wanted to, I didn't want it to be a long read. I wanted it to be a fast resource guide that we could pull out every now and then and go, okay, did I do that today? Did I do that today? So
A lot of it is good, you know, sales techniques and conversational things. If you're, I learned that because I'm not very good at remembering faces,
yeah.
especially if I don't have a context. Like, have you ever noticed this? If you see your dental assistant or dental hygienist, you always remember her name. But if you see her at Target, you know her, but you don't know how or what's up, and you're hoping she gives you some clue when she comes to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all context. I think a lot of it's context.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. In your industry, in your world, how has COVID changed the way you do your business?
Yes. So COVID hurt all of us. Every single device.
Because I mean, isn't your power your in-person contact?
Absolutely.
It's not your Zoom power.
No. And that was one thing that, especially for my area, which I think is actually going to keep us hopefully in business the longest, because a lot of things have become more automated. A lot of, you know, there's this whole push to have reps come in on a Zoom versus in person. Because my business is so personal, yes, it hurt us tremendously. It hurt us from the standpoint of treating our patients. I mean, you know, the second round, we're basically seeing where patients that should be coming in for ruptures and dissections and aneurysms, they're dying at home. When you have patients that are taking up the OR, or not the OR, the waiting rooms and the beds, because we can't physically accept them. In Florida, I will be honest, it's a little bit of a problem. In other states, it's not quite as bad.
Right, Florida's a big deal.
So, but personally, yes, there was that time when COVID first hit where we weren't allowed back into the ORs, and it was very frightening to know that if they call us, I mean, I did a couple of FaceTime cases because I had to. But no, that personal one-on-one time, I mean, there were states that wouldn't allow reps to come back into the hospitals, offices, all of that for a long time. And all of that is all of the time that we get with these surgeons. So yeah, it hurt us pretty bad. And it's changed a lot of the way that we work even today. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, it does. And I have a couple more.
yeah. Okay.
I want to ask you this. How have television ads affected your industry? Now, I know you're not necessarily in pharmaceutical and no one's going, hey, I want the Stryker implant for my knee or whatever. They're not doing that. But what about automation,
Great question.
TV
Great
ads?
question.
How does that
Yeah.
affect your industry?
So our patients are actually a lot smarter, sometimes too smart for their own good.
Yeah.
They Google a lot. And, they'll come in and say, well, Dr. So-and-so, I want this stent graft with this.
Yeah.
I Googled you and you do this. So we do have a fair amount of that. And if a company has a major recall, like one recently did, they come in, don't be putting that in me. I better not have that put in me, and that could be across the board, pacemakers. I mean,
Anything,
any type of implant. So yes, our patients are sometimes a little too intelligent. And then you get the others that are so trusting from the little tiny towns. That doctor could do anything and they're going to just, okay, sir, that's perfect. So
I learned that. Rose Caswick, and I learned that.
Yeah.
Senior doctor.
You be very careful suing the only doctor in a small town, no matter what he does.
Yep.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. Let's see what else I have. Why did you choose this profession?
Great question. So my father's an orthopedic surgeon. I wanted to go into medicine. And I'll never forget, I was getting ready to graduate. And he said, don't go to medical school. You don't want to be a doctor. By the time you graduate, you'll be 30 something years old.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to have a family. You won't be able to do this or that. It'll be socialized medicine. And it's just in me. My mother, who passed away when I was 2, she was in the medical profession as well. And I think it's just in my blood. Yeah. And so when I'm in the OR and I'm helping these surgeons do these cases over a patient, and that patient is dying on the table and we're going to save their life, there's nothing better than that. And I can walk away and I text the doctor in the morning and I'm like, so how is Mr. So-and-so doing? And he or she texts back and says, amazing. I can't even believe the recovery that this patient has made. It just happened a couple of days ago. There's nothing better than that feeling. Nothing.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. That has to make up for some of the negatives we've already addressed.
Yes, it does. So, it does. It makes it all worth it. I mean, it truly does.
Do you ever hear from your patients? Yeah. Do you ever hear from them at all?
No, we're not allowed. When I was in pacing, when I did pacemakers, and I did that locally here at Tallahassee, and I worked with a couple of really wonderful EPs in town. That was fun because I got to actually see them come back, and we worked on the pacemakers, and you can optimize them, so you get to see them actually quite a bit. You see them every 3 to 6 months, and you do form that relationship with them, and it's really fun. But no, unfortunately, they're covered in drape prior to us walking into the OR, and they're still covered in drape when we leave. There's never a time that we're allowed to touch the patient or talk to the patient, at least in my experience.
That's the reason why that guy gets all the credit. That male surgeon gets all the credit. You say me, no, I don't even know what's happening. It's like if I went into a trial room, no, I'm not the girl. No, I'm the face. No, all these people behind me are working the magic. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask or talk about? Kimmy, Kia, Rose?
Well, I know we titled this talk, Stop Apologizing for Being a Badass.
Yes.
I kind of want to get to that. I'm not sure
Do
how
it.
to come up with that, but
yeah, like, do you also wear leopard fur to work? Are you that kind of are you a Kimmy Hogan badass, Lisa? Or is
I love it. I love the leopard.
I'm just cold all the time.
In September in Tallahassee, Florida.
No,
that is an entirely different show, Kimmy. That requires an explanation, but I want to give attention to our guests.
So I think, again, early on, I wasn't I didn't feel as confident as I do today. And I think that some of that just comes with age. I think all of us can appreciate that, men and women. But no, now I'm proud of it. Now I live in it. And, I've recently had some very good discussions with management, upper management, physicians and even colleagues about the fact that once you're in it and you do it right, you own it. Own it and don't apologize for it.
Yeah.
Own it because you've worked so hard to get there that nobody's going to take it from you. And you're going to continually up your game every day. Make sure you're checking all the boxes, because that's just who I am. That's what I represent. And I don't know if everybody has that, but that's what I have. And so that's what drives me every day is I get in the car and I'm like, you know, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because this is what I want. And this is what I deserve.
Mhm.
And someone not that long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, looked at me and said, I wasn't good enough.
Mm.
And ever
Oh,
since
boy.
that happened, I just kind of said, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to take everything that you have and I'm going to show you that I deserve it. And so that's what I've done. I've literally taken the market from one of my competitors
I
and I'm so happy.
like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
love this. I love it. You know, because so many people would just go, I guess I don't belong here, or
Mhm.
I should have never been here, or whatever. But when you go, okay, I don't just want mine, I want all of yours too. And I'm
Yeah.
coming for you. I
And
love
I'm
it.
coming.
I
Yep.
love that. Now, did COVID change the number of voluntary, or what do you call them?
Elective.
Voluntary surgeries?
Electives. Yes.
Elective.
So yes, and it's unfortunately happening a little bit now as well. We're seeing
Yeah.
the resurgence, though we think it's going to die down again. But yes, for a while there, it was only emergent cases, and it was only on a an inpatient type demand thing. Now it's thankfully coming back again for electives are getting done, but it's still not to where it was. At least in some of my hospitals, it's not, and we're all a little concerned about that. We need it to go back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the growth in your career? Like where you are now, what do you aspire to? What does additional growth and success look like for you?
Sure. So, it's funny that you ask. I've been doing just sales for a very long time. I've been a trainer, I've been a mentor, but I've never climbed the ladder in terms of management and upper management, honestly, because I really like having my feet on the ground and having control of my own territory. Nobody can touch it. It's mine. I cultivated it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to hurt it but me. But recently I've thought about getting into management. I've voiced my opinion. They all know that's what I want now. And I feel like I'm now at a place in my life where I do want to pass it on. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I want to mentor, because I want to give other women a chance to do what I do and be successful at it and not have to apologize for it, and
Yeah.
show that we are as good, if not better than men at exactly the same job.
Well, that was actually my next question is, what would you do or say to encourage people coming up under you to
Mhm.
get into your industry? How to do it, what they should do to prepare themselves for? Should they have biology majors? Tell me about the career and
Sure.
the growth in the career and how to get young people interested in it.
Yep. So, well, first of all, it's no secret that we get paid relatively well, depending
Yeah,
on
girl. Yeah.
depending on the companies
Why I
that
asked.
depending on the companies that we work for and the products that we sell and the on-call time, you better damn get paid for it, because you're
Right.
working your butt off for it. I'm not selling Band-Aids. Band-Aids are
Right.
great, but I'm not selling Band-Aids.
Right.
So, I think
Any in that.
no. So, but it's a great place to start, right? So if I were to tell a young 20-something-year-old that's just graduating college that wants to get into it, first it's who you know, how well do you know them, who are your connections, can you move, are you mobile, are you married with kids, or are you free and clear? Can we take you inside? Can we train you ourselves, give you the golden handcuffs is what we call it inside the corporate world. Can we train you our way to make you who we want you to be? So those are some of the things for the young 20-year-olds. If they can say yes to all of that, they're a much better hire than those that have already been tied down. Does the degree matter? I mean, nowadays, I think they have degrees in sales. So, it's all within your personality.
It's training. It is a valuable thing. It's how
Yeah.
the world goes around.
Well,
I don't know why people would ever discount the significance of sales or study it or
Right.
provide degrees in it.
Right. Well, I do think it's important, but it's also feet on the ground. You can't just learn sales in a book. You got to be out there actually physically doing it. Otherwise you won't get it.
Mhm.
So, for most women, I would say if they can't get right into it, than any type of outside sales. I don't care if you're selling cars.
Yeah.
Just get out there and have a good
Yeah.
track record, an amazing track record, which will prove to anybody, can you sell ice to an Eskimo? If
Right.
you can, we're probably going to hire you. If you're smart, you know, you're a go-getter, you're mobile, you can learn fast, you know, all of these things are very key qualities, I think, for sales, male or female. The
Right.
next thing is, of course, then we got to figure out if you can make it in the OR. And what that means is truly, can you put a mask and a hat on and stand inside of an OR? We've all gotten a little bit used to breathing through masks, but you go into a sterile environment where you smell cautery, which is burning of skin, and you smell, you know, blood, which blood smells very interesting.
Yeah,
You can
irony.
you can smell other really terrible things as well. You got to be able to manage all of that and still have a clear head. And if you can manage all of that, then you've kind of moved on to the next level of, yes, you're probably hireable. And then of course, third is your performance. Do you perform? You know? So
see, that to me, that to me is what I would want people to understand. Nothing matters more than performance. Nothing matters more than outcome. It doesn't matter that you work harder, longer, more, nothing, outcome. And so to me, the goal should be, how do I achieve that outcome with the least amount of effort so I have more time and energy to spend on things that I like?
Yeah.
So yeah, outcome. I would want to ask you this though, what is the difference getting into your world, going corporate structure versus freelance? Does anybody represent more than one product or pharmaceutical, or are you company men, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. So you can either be a distributor or you can be an employee of a company. Distributorships usually work with orthopedic companies. Most of the companies, well, all of the companies that I've worked for have only been, I'm an employee of the company, but you can do a distributorship. And just to answer your other question that I probably didn't answer is, you can choose to climb the ladder corporate wise. When you move inside though, you may take a pay cut. You will take a pay cut. You will have to learn other opportunities within the company. You may have to go into marketing. You may have to go into operations. You may have to go into all of these different things in order to climb that company ladder. But if that's what you want to do, you can absolutely do that.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I've enjoyed this. I mean, this is one of these hours that has gotten me stimulated in many ways, because I 100% get what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you've got to work with the environment you're in, and you're trying to tell people how to be successful in that environment. I'm trying to fight that environment. And so I would think we would be oppositional in some ways. We are, I think, operationally, but not philosophically. I think we're all working toward the same thing. So I want to go around to everybody just one last time before we close today. I want to start with Kia. Any closing questions or comments you have about our guest today? And thank you so much, Lisa. This is awesome.
This is great.
I think in any work environment, you kind of have to have a sounding board, or so to speak, and then second part, I should say, squad goals in a sense. So do you have that sounding board where you can actually probably, and Kimmy's next door to me, so I can probably run in there and say, Kimmy, this is what's going on. I do run into Rose, I run into Dana. I think all of us have that sounding board with one another based on the situations, you know? So do you have that in this industry? And if you do, have you built that squad to where it's like, we are in this together and we're going to continue to help one another, whether it's like referrals or, you know, saying, hey girl, I know you just had this situation. I want to tell you this. How has that been going on, or that dynamic?
That's a great question. Absolutely. Yes, I have many sounding boards within the company and outside the company. Sometimes I need an outside opinion, non-biased, but I have a couple of really key girlfriends that I'll call. We'll talk about things, whether it's the way a certain situation was managed, or it's just an overall arching, we just want to complain, right, about inventory or whatever it is that we want to complain. So yes, I do have that. And yes, I've been building that as well. In fact, in our company, we're finally doing a women's initiative group, which will bring into effect all of the women in the company, not just in sales, but in, you know, like operations. And we have a manufacturing plant where all the little ladies are making our stent grafts. They actually hand sew our stent grafts. So we're gonna bring them all in, and it's really cool. So yes, I have a sounding board, and I don't think we could do it without it.
Right.
That is fantastic. I love it. Because again, it's all about being practical. It's all about, we're not living in a theoretical universe, we're living in reality. And so we've got to do what we got to do and enlist the help of people to help us reach our goals. Kimmy, what do you want to say as we wrap up today?
Just thanks so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Rose, what about you?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for being here, and it's been interesting to learn about, a industry that I'm not familiar with, despite being sort of semi-adjacent to it, working, in this field, and to see how things are kind of the same but different, across
Yeah.
different fields. So I guess, is there one thing, a piece of advice in your book or in your experience that you think applies more broadly to all, women in business, I guess?
Yeah, it's not easy, and there's no balance. There's never a balance between being a mother and a wife and a career-driven woman. So you just do the best that you can, and you have support behind you.
Yeah.
That is 100% throughout anything that I think any career woman faces. We all have to just kind of, we make it work. And sometimes we think we've got it right, and sometimes it all explodes, but we're women and we're trying the best that we can, and we are trying to manage men and our kids and everything. So have a good support system. Don't take things so personally, and just, continue doing what you love.
I 100% agree with all of that. And I thank you so much for being vulnerable with us today and sharing those things, your experiences with us. There is a reality, and there is a reality we want to become reality. And so we've got to all work together. We've got to support each other. We've got to be open to different ideas, things we haven't considered. And we have to realize this, the people that we think we're fighting against, it's more institutional than individual.
Mm-hmm.
So don't take things personally, and realize that their eyes are opening just as ours are. And so it's going to take a minute, but if we could be kind to one another on this journey, I think we can get where we ultimately want to be, which is everybody feels supported. No one gender feels overly burdened with, the whole, taking care of the universe, the economy, the personal economy. I just think we've got a lot to gain by seeing each other differently, and seeing people like our guest here today, Lisa, seeing her as a fully empowered woman who should be able to speak to a doctor, on professional terms, and there shouldn't be any sort of backlash because you're out of your lane or that sort of thing. So that's what we started the EmPower plant for. That's why we have the EmPower hours, to people to come and share things like this and to equalize the power in the world, empower everybody. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Here,
This is
all of you today.
fantastic.
Yeah, love it. So we hope to see you next Thursday at 4:30 for another episode of the EmPower Hour, brought to you by the EmPower Plant. Good week, everybody.